my name is Allison Dye. I'm 24 years old. I'm Italian American, and I live with multiple sclerosis, migraine, and functional neurological disorder. So when it comes to migraine, I would say the worst symptoms are, besides the pain itself, which is not the pain of just a normal headache, are probably nausea and the cognitive difficulties I have afterwards. I often describe it as feeling as if my thoughts have to move through clouds, so I'll have difficulty remembering words, knowing how to communicate clearly, or focusing or concentrating on something, and I'll miss like really small details because it's just really hard for me to focus in that moment. And this can last even for the rest of the day. When it comes to multiple sclerosis, I would say that the worst symptoms that affect me on the day-to-day are fatigue, meaning that I get tired quite easily compared to people my age or even people around me. And often, like even a task like taking a shower for me can be really exhausting. Also chronic pain, which is one of my very first symptoms. I have pain all over pretty much constantly. And then when it comes to FND, I would say tics, spasms, inability to speak sometimes, tremors, inability to walk, or sometimes even control opening and closing my eyes. These are all very debilitating. I feel like in regards to migraine and multiple sclerosis, I have all of the services that I need. I was given great treatment options, and I think that's what made it so hard when I received my functional neurological disorder diagnosis, because there weren't as many resources, treatment options, or even specialists that could help me. As a child, when I first got sick, I was about 8 years old, and I remember as both a child and an early teen that doctors often disbelieved me because of my age. A lot of doctors and healthcare professionals thought that I was making it up, just wanting attention or wanting to get out of doing something I didn't want to do, like go to bed, go to school, or do some chores around the house. And I think that age bias stays with you, like the trauma of it stays with you for the rest of your life, being disbelieved as a child. And even when my parents were such good advocates for me, it was still difficult, because if the doctors didn't believe me because I was so young, my parents could do very little to convince them. As I've grown, I've encountered sex and gender bias from doctors waving off symptoms or problems as being my hormones, as being, well, maybe it's because you're about to have your period. This is dismissive, and it feels really terrible. I've also experienced being waved off as having a mental problem, especially in regards to my FND diagnosis. I've been told that it was maybe anxiety, or that I just needed to go see a therapist because I was really stressed. We know from data and research that women are often dismissed because they believe they're just being hysterical. Bias should never exist in healthcare. I have no words to describe the precise feeling I've felt when encountering these biases. I just know that I never want it to happen again, and I don't want it to happen to other kids or other women. So the Women's Brain Project is an organization working to establish the first research institute for sex and gender precision medicine. Historically, we know that medical research was focused on male anatomy and biology, and the Women's Brain Project is looking to change that by looking at brain and mental disorders through a sex and gender lens. So the work of the Women's Brain Project is so important, not only because they're working to establish this research institute, but also because of what they're doing now in research, what they're doing now to raise awareness on brain and mental disorders and bring attention to the importance of sex and gender differences in all of these brain and mental disorders. And not only are they bringing awareness within the scientific community, within the community of researchers, but they're also bringing awareness to healthcare providers, patients, the lay public, employers, and policymakers too. And I think that this work is especially inspiring just because they do listen to people living with these disorders, because they care about their stories and they care about what they have to say about this. And I think that any organization that wants to hear from all sides because they want to make a change and they understand that that change has to be made by bringing all of these people together, I don't know, I think that is beautiful, and I think it is going to be the way that they change the world. You can say, but you don't look sick, and there are 3 dangers that I see with this statement. While it may seem harmless or like a compliment, I think first off, it can seem minimizing. It can seem like you're doubting what they've just told you or shared with you, like you don't believe them, like you're questioning whether it's true or not. And if someone has told you that they live with a brain or mental disorder, believe them. Secondly, I think that it can be said in a moment of doubt, so, but you don't look sick. In that moment, if someone with a brain or mental disorder is asking for help, asking for additional resources or services to better help them as they live with a brain or mental disorder, whether it's a work accommodation, whether it's health care, whether it's a mobility aid, it's not up to the person to decide whether they look sick enough to need that. And I think, once again, that's dangerous. The third problem I see with this is that there's a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions around what sick people should look like or how they should act. And this is just problematic because everyone's different. Every individual in the world is different. So it's not that surprising that people with different mental and brain disorders, even if they have the same diagnosis, they may look, act, or seem different or have different and various symptoms. And so I think that's what I wish more people understood. You need to know, if you're living with a brain or mental disorder, that it's not your fault. This is something that I've felt with every diagnosis, wondering how I could have prevented it, what I could have done. The truth is, it's not your fault. And carrying that guilt or shame or embarrassment isn't going to help you in the long run. So please just know it's not your fault, and you're not alone. There are a lot of us out there. I want to thank everyone at Women's Brain Project for the amazing work that they are doing, and I also want to thank them for interviewing me today. It means a lot to be heard, to be listened to, and Women's Brain Project is listening to our stories, to our experiences, and they're making real world change, and that means the world to me.